There are several grounds for divorce in New York. We have no fault and we have fault-based concerns. So the fault-based ones are the obvious ones, like adultery, cruel and inhuman treatment, abandonment, perhaps you get separated pursuant to a separation agreement, or a judge orders that you are separated. Those are the fault type of divorces in New York. We also have a no-fault divorce in New York now, and it's based upon an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage for at least 6 months. Now, I know that's a mouthful, and that's okay. You don't have to understand all of that, but as long as one party can sign an affidavit stating that there's been an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage, you can go under the no-fault based divorce in New York. One of the terms that you need to agree upon or need to be resolved to get divorced is the division of assets. And how do we do that? So we need to look at the date that you got married and the date that somebody started a divorce proceeding. And we look at all the assets and debts that were accumulated during that period of time. There are, of course, some exceptions, but just generally speaking, all the assets that are accumulated during the divorce are considered marital property. New York is a marital property state. Anything that was acquired before the marriage is typically called a separate property asset, and that would not be subject to division in divorce. Again, of course, there are exceptions, and that's something that your attorney can help you understand. Generally speaking, marital assets are divided 50-50. We have a term called equitable distribution, which doesn't necessarily mean 50-50, but for practical purposes, that's where we start at in the event that someone is going to ask for an equitable distribution of assets, which again does not necessarily mean 50-50. It would require looking at a number of factors that the court would need to evaluate to determine a good reason. A common reason why an equitable distribution of the assets would not be a 50-50 split might be perhaps someone started a business before the marriage, and now the business is continuing through the marriage. So, of course, the spouse has some interest in the business that was operating throughout the marriage, but there'll be some credit given to the person who started the business before the marriage. That may be a reason not to have a 50-50 split, because they'll give more credit to the person who started the business before the marriage. So I get this question all the time about what is alimony. We no longer use the term alimony. It has a very negative connotation, and it's gone through a few different iterations. So we now call it spousal support or maintenance is another term that we're using in New York. And the way that it works is that there's a formula. There's actually a couple of formulas. And depending upon who is considered the payor spouse, paying the spousal support to the payee spouse. We look at their incomes and then we apply a formula. Once the formula is applied, if it results in a positive number as opposed to a negative number, that becomes the spousal support number that's paid per month typically. And then we need to figure out the duration. The duration is based upon a set of guidelines. It's not by statute. There's no law specifically stating how long, but there are guidelines that are given that the judges use to determine how long spousal support should be paid for. And if you're going to negotiate, let's say, you're going to settle your divorce, you might look at those guidelines and use them as a basis to determine, in your situation, how long should spousal support be paid for. When there are children involved in a divorce situation, they're under the age of 21, there are several additional factors that need to be resolved in order to be able to get a divorce in New York. So those are, you have to determine a parenting plan, or some people call visitation. When is the child spending time with mom? When is the child spending time with dad? The other considerations are legal custody, so decision-making. How are you and your soon-to-be ex going to co-parent and make decisions for your children? And then, of course, lastly is child support. So who's going to pay child support? How much is child support going to be paid, and for how long? Should you have any additional questions about divorce in New York, please give Sabra Law Group a call for a consultation.